The intercepted transmission. The Galactic Intelligence Council's monitoring station hung in the void like a metallic flower, its crystalline petals slowly rotating to catch whispers from across the galaxy. For 300 cycles, it had maintained its vigil in the outer rim, cataloging the rise and fall of civilizations with the patience that only immortal beings possessed. Commander Zexthera of the Vorthan Collective stood before the main display, her 4 arms moving in practiced rhythm across the control surfaces. Her species had evolved from peaceful herbivores on a world where the greatest conflict was competition for sunlight. The concept of intentional violence remained as foreign to her as breathing water. Another routine sweep, Commander. Dr. Millicent Corr's voice carried the melodic tones of the Nexeri, a species whose greatest evolutionary achievement was the ability to share emotions through bioluminescent patterns. As the station's synapsepsychologist, she specialized in understanding the minds of emerging species. Standard protocol, Doctor. Zexthera's primary hands continued their work while her secondary arms gestured toward a blue-green world displayed on the screen. We're monitoring transmissions from the 3rd planet of System Sol 3. The inhabitants call it Earth. Lieutenant Quindar, whose telepathic abilities made him invaluable for communications analysis, tilted his elongated head. His people, the Zephyrians, had achieved perfect mental harmony centuries ago, eliminating conflict through shared consciousness. The primitives with the chemical propulsion systems. I thought they were classified as pre-interstellar. They are. Zexthera's tone carried mild curiosity. But their communication traffic has increased exponentially in recent decades. We're required to monitor any species approaching technological threshold. The main screen flickered as new data streamed in. What appeared was routine at first. Commercial broadcasts, civilian communications, scientific data exchanges. The kind of chatter typical of a species discovering global connectivity. Then something changed. Commander, Quindar's mental voice carried an edge of confusion. I'm detecting encrypted military channels. The complexity is unexpected for their technological level. Dr. Corr moved closer to her analysis station, her skin patterns shifting to deep blue curiosity. Military communications from a pre-spaceflight species. How sophisticated could they be? The answer came in fragments at first. Decoded transmissions revealed training schedules, equipment manifests, strategic discussions, standard military logistics that would be unremarkable from any spacefaring civilization. But as the hours passed and more data accumulated, patterns emerged that defied their understanding. This can't be right, Zexthera muttered, her 4 eyes focusing on different data streams simultaneously. These humans appear to maintain standing armies during peacetime. Multiple armies, on the same planet. Quindar's telepathic abilities allowed him to process the emotional undertones of communications in ways others couldn't. What he discovered in the human transmissions disturbed him deeply. Commander, the psychological profiles I'm detecting. These aren't the minds of peaceful beings forced into conflict. These are individuals who've been conditioned for warfare from childhood. The first video transmission they successfully decoded showed what humans called a training exercise. Zexthera watched in growing alarm as young humans, barely past adolescence, moved through simulated combat scenarios with lethal precision. They carried weapons designed to kill their own species, responding to commands with mechanical efficiency that spoke of endless repetition. "This is barbaric," Dr. Corr whispered, her skin patterns flashing orange distress. "They're teaching their offspring to kill before they've even reached maturity." But Quindar detected something else in the transmission, something that made his telepathic senses recoil. "It's not just training, Doctor. They enjoy it. I can sense anticipation, excitement, pride. They take satisfaction in perfecting their ability to destroy." More transmissions followed. Military academies where humans studied the history of warfare with the devotion other species reserve for art or philosophy. Research facilities developing increasingly sophisticated weapons not in response to external threats, but in constant preparation for conflicts that might never come. Defense contractors competing to create more efficient methods of destruction. "Look at this," Zexthera called, her voice tight with disbelief. She displayed a decoded transmission showing human military forces conducting what they called war games. Thousands of soldiers engaged in massive simulated battles, complete with explosions, injuries, and psychological stress deliberately designed to mirror actual warfare. Dr. Kaur studied the footage with growing horror. They're traumatizing themselves voluntarily, creating artificial stress scenarios that would shatter the psyche of most species, and they call it training. The breakthrough came when they intercepted a human documentary about their own military history. The file was massive, containing thousands of hours of footage spanning centuries of human warfare. What they discovered challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization itself. "Commander," Quindar's mental voice trembled with something approaching fear. "You need to see this. They've been documenting their own conflicts. All of them. For centuries." The footage was overwhelming. Humans wielding primitive weapons with deadly skill, their faces showing not terror or reluctance, but determination and focus. Battles involving millions of combatants, casualties that would have meant extinction for smaller species, yet humans treating them as acceptable losses in pursuit of victory. "This section is labeled Ancient Warfare," Dr. Kaur reported, her voice barely steady. "Ancient. They're referring to periods thousands of years ago, when they fought with metal blades and projectile weapons. But look at the tactical sophistication." The screen showed human formations moving with mechanical precision, soldiers advancing over the bodies of their fallen comrades without hesitation. Cavalry charges that demonstrated complete disregard for personal safety in service of tactical objectives. Siege warfare that lasted for years, with entire populations willing to endure starvation rather than surrender. "They've been perfecting the art of killing their own species for millennia," Zexthera said, her forearms trembling. "Not out of necessity, but as a form of cultural evolution." Quindar had gone silent, his telepathic abilities overwhelmed by the emotional resonance of the human recordings. When he finally spoke, his mental voice carried undertones of existential dread. "Commander, I need to report something that contradicts our fundamental understanding of intelligence development." "What is it, Lieutenant?" "These humans, they don't just fight when threatened. They don't just defend when attacked. They plan for wars that don't exist yet. They prepare for enemies they haven't met. They treat peace as a temporary condition between conflicts." Dr. Kaur's skin had gone pale, her bioluminescent patterns dimmed with shock. "That's impossible. No intelligent species develops that way. Civilization means the elimination of intraspecies conflict, not its perfection." But the evidence continued to accumulate. Human military doctrine that treated warfare as both science and art. Training programs that deliberately broke down individual psychology to rebuild it around group loyalty and tactical thinking. Weapons development that progressed not in response to threats, but as an intellectual exercise in applied destruction. "Look at this timeline," Zexthera said, displaying centuries of human conflict. Wars ending not with the elimination of military capacity, but with immediate preparation for the next conflict. They study their defeats more carefully than their victories, treating each failure as education for future success. The most disturbing discovery came in a transmission labeled Current Military Assessment. It was a human analysis of their own species' combat capabilities, written with clinical detachment that spoke of profound self-awareness. "They know what they are," Quindar reported, his mental voice hollow. "They understand that they're the most successful predator species their planet has ever produced, and they're proud of it." The final transmission that day came from a human military academy graduation ceremony. Young humans receiving commissions as officers, swearing oaths to defend their nations, ready to lead others into battle if necessary. But what struck the observers was not the ceremony itself, but the context. These humans were graduating into a military during peacetime, preparing for conflicts that existed only as possibilities. They were volunteering to spend their lives studying warfare, maintaining readiness for battles that might never come, treating constant preparation for violence as a normal career path. "We need to contact the Council immediately," Zexthera said, her voice carrying the weight of terrible understanding. "We're not observing the emergence of another peaceful spacefaring species. We're watching the development of something else entirely." Dr. Kaur was already composing her psychological assessment report. "Commander, if these patterns hold true, if humans achieve interstellar capability while maintaining these psychological and cultural characteristics..." She didn't need to finish the thought. The implications were clear to all of them. "Lieutenant Quindar, prepare a priority transmission to Galactic Command," Zexthera ordered. "Classification: Existential Threat Assessment. We need an emergency session of the Intelligence Council." As the station's communication array powered up to send their report across the galaxy, the three observers stood in silence, watching the blue world of Earth continue its rotation. Somewhere on that planet, humans were training, planning, preparing for conflicts that existed only in their imagination. And for the first time in the 300-year history of the monitoring station, the observers were afraid. The terrible truth. The emergency session of the Galactic Intelligence Council convened in the crystal chambers of Nexus Prime, a meeting space carved from a single asteroid and polished to mirror perfection. Representatives from 12 different species materialized through quantum projection, their varied forms reflecting millions of years of divergent evolution, united by common principles of peace and cooperation. Admiral Vexhai of the crystalline Cathera spoke first, her translucent form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns. "Commander Zexthera, your report has caused considerable alarm across the Defense Coalition. You're claiming that a pre-interstellar species represents an existential threat to galactic civilization." Zexthera stood before the assembled representatives, her forearms steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. "Admiral, with respect, our findings suggest that everything we understand about the development of intelligent species may be fundamentally flawed." Scholar Nimbeta of the Aquatic Delphine Collective rippled her fins in skepticism. Her people had achieved perfect societal harmony through collective decision-making, eliminating conflict through shared consciousness. "Commander, conflict is a primitive response to resource scarcity. No species maintains organized warfare beyond the development of adequate technology and social cooperation." "That's what we believed, Scholar, but humans appear to have developed along an entirely different evolutionary path." Zexthera activated the chamber's holographic display, showing the accumulated data from their monitoring station. "They haven't eliminated conflict. They've perfected it." General Torx of the insectoid hive mind collective clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. Their civilization was built on absolute cooperation, with individual consciousness subsumed into collective intelligence. "One species cannot threaten galactic civilization. We represent thousands of worlds, trillions of beings, technology advanced beyond their comprehension." "General, that's exactly the assumption that makes humans dangerous," Dr. Kaur interjected, her skin patterns flashing urgent red. "They don't think like us. They don't approach conflict the way we understand it." The display showed human military footage, but this time the analysis was deeper, more comprehensive. Months of intercepted transmissions had revealed patterns that defied conventional understanding of intelligent behavior. "Observe their approach to warfare," Zexthera began, highlighting tactical manuals and training footage. "Every other species we've encountered treats conflict as an unfortunate necessity, something to be resolved quickly and permanently. Humans treat it as an intellectual discipline." The assembled representatives watched footage of human military academies, where officers studied historical battles with the intensity other species reserve for artistic or scientific pursuits. Libraries dedicated to military strategy, with thousands of volumes analyzing every aspect of organized conflict. Simulation exercises that recreated historical battles for educational purposes. "They study failure," Admiral Vexhai observed, her crystalline form flickering with confusion. "This footage shows them analyzing their defeats in detail. Why would they preserve records of their own weaknesses? Because they learn from them. Quindar responded through the quantum link. Every defeat becomes education for future conflicts. They don't just study warfare, Admiral. They evolve it. Scholar Nim Beta's water-filled environmental suit bubbled with agitation. This is primitive behavior. Surely, as their technology advances, they'll abandon these destructive tendencies. The display shifted to show human military development over time. Instead of decreasing violence as they advanced technologically, humans had increased the sophistication and scale of their conflicts. World wars involving entire continents, weapons capable of destroying their own planet, strategic doctrines that treated the potential extinction of their species as an acceptable risk. They call their current era peacetime, Dr. Kaur reported, her voice hollow with disbelief. But during this peace, they maintain military forces larger than the total population of most civilized worlds. They spend enormous resources developing weapons they hope never to use. General Torx's collective consciousness recoiled from the implications. That's insane. Resource allocation for unused defensive systems violates basic principles of efficient social organization. It's not defensive, General, Zexthera corrected, displaying human military doctrine documents. They call it power projection. The ability to extend force anywhere on their planet within hours. They maintain this capability not in response to specific threats, but as general preparation for unknown future conflicts. The chamber fell silent as the representatives processed this information. The concept of maintaining aggressive capability without specific enemies challenged their fundamental understanding of rational behavior. Show them the psychological profiles, Dr. Kaur suggested grimly. The display changed to show human soldiers in training. But this wasn't the mechanical drilling they had initially observed. This was systematic psychological conditioning, breaking down individual personalities to rebuild them around concepts of duty, sacrifice, and group loyalty that transcended self-preservation. They volunteer for this, Quindar reported, his telepathic abilities picking up the emotional resonance of the human subjects. They choose to undergo psychological modification that makes them more effective at organized violence, and their societies honor them for it. Admiral Vexhay's crystalline structure dimmed with incomprehension. They're deliberately damaging their own psychology. That's contrary to every principle of mental health and social stability. But effective, General Torx admitted reluctantly. His collective consciousness was analyzing the tactical implications despite his revulsion. Their combat efficiency rates exceed anything in our military databases. Individual humans demonstrate coordination and persistence that match our best hive mind units. Scholar Nim Beta was studying the human historical timeline with growing alarm. This pattern extends back millennia. They haven't recently developed these characteristics in response to external pressure. This is their baseline cultural evolution. The display showed human civilization across thousands of years, constant warfare, brief periods of peace used for preparation and recovery, technological advancement driven by military necessity, cultural heroes who were primarily warriors and conquerors. They worship their most successful killers, Dr. Kaur observed, showing human monuments and historical records. Their greatest cultural figures are military leaders, strategic thinkers, individuals who excelled at organized violence. They preserve the memories of battles as other species preserve great works of art. Admiral Vexhay examined the data with growing unease. What are their current capabilities? If they achieve interstellar travel, what level of threat do they represent? Zexthera had been dreading this question. Admiral, based on their historical patterns and current development trajectory, we estimate that humans achieving spaceflight capability would represent an unprecedented threat to galactic stability. The chamber's atmospheric processors hummed as various life support systems adjusted to the stress responses of different species. Fear was becoming a tangible presence in the room. They don't just fight to defend, Zexthera continued. They fight to expand. Their entire history is expansion through conquest, followed by consolidation, followed by further expansion. They call it manifest destiny. the belief that they're entitled to control whatever they can reach. General Torx's mandibles clicked rapidly, his collective consciousness struggling to process the implications. You're suggesting they would view interstellar space as territory to be conquered? Not suggesting, General. Confirming. We intercepted their preliminary space exploration plans. They're already discussing territorial claims on other planets in their system. Uninhabited planets they intend to colonize and control. Scholar Nim Beta had been quietly analyzing psychological data throughout the discussion. When she spoke, her voice carried profound, disturbed undertones. There's something else, something that makes this worse than simple aggression. All attention focused on her aquatic form. What is it, Scholar? They're not just warriors. They're thinking warriors. Every conflict they engage in, they analyze, document, and theorize about. They've developed an intellectual framework for violence that treats it as both practical skill and abstract science. The display showed human military colleges where officers studied not just tactics and strategy, but the philosophy of warfare, theoretical frameworks for understanding conflict, psychological studies of combat effectiveness, strategic doctrines that treated warfare as an extension of political policy. They've created an academic discipline around organized violence, Scholar Nim Beta continued. They have scholars who spend their entire lives studying optimal methods of destruction, and they teach these concepts to succeeding generations. Admiral Vexhay's crystalline form was now flickering with alarm patterns. Are you telling us they've intellectualized aggression? Made it part of their educational system? More than that, Admiral. They've made it part of their cultural identity. Being prepared for warfare isn't something humans do. It's something they are. The final revelation came when Quindar shared his telepathic analysis of human combat psychology. Representatives, in all my years analyzing alien minds, I've never encountered anything like human combat mentality. When they engage in violence, they don't experience the psychological trauma that would incapacitate other species. They experience what they call battle joy. The silence in the chamber was absolute. They enjoy it. Quindar continued, his mental voice barely controlled. Not just the victory, but the process itself. The tactical challenge, the physical stress, the teamwork required for success. They find combat psychologically rewarding in ways that go beyond simple survival instinct. General Torx stood abruptly, his collective consciousness reaching a conclusion that sent ripples of alarm through his hive mind. We need to evacuate this sector of space immediately, General. Admiral Vexhay questioned. Don't you understand? We're not dealing with another peaceful species that might potentially become aggressive. We're dealing with apex predators who've spent millennia perfecting the art of warfare and are about to gain access to interstellar technology. The chamber erupted in multilingual expressions of alarm as the full implications became clear. A species that treated warfare as both cultural identity and intellectual discipline, achieving spaceflight capability, with expansion-driven psychology and advanced organizational systems. Scholar Nim Beta was the first to voice what they were all thinking. How long before they achieve interstellar capability? Zexthera consulted her data. Based on their current technological progression and resource allocation, approximately 50 to 75 Earth years. Admiral Vexhay's crystalline form went completely dark, a sign of system shock among her species. That's not enough time to develop adequate defensive measures. Our entire civilization is built on principles of cooperation and mutual assistance. We have no experience with organized aggression from spacefaring species. What do we do? General Torx asked, his collective consciousness already calculating military logistics that hadn't been needed for millennia. The chamber fell silent as the representatives faced a reality none of them had imagined. After millions of years of galactic civilization built on peace and cooperation, they had discovered a species that represented everything their cultures had evolved beyond. Dr. Kaur spoke first, her skin patterns cycling through colors that had no names in her language. We have three options: attempt peaceful contact and hope their expansion can be channeled constructively. develop military capabilities we haven't needed for eons, and prepare for conflict. Or, she didn't finish the third option, but everyone understood. Preventive action while humans were still confined to their single world. Admiral Vexay's form began to brighten again, but the light was different now. Harder, more focused. I'm calling for an immediate expansion of defensive capabilities across all coalition worlds. Whatever we decide, we need to be prepared. As the session ended and representatives began disconnecting from the quantum link, each carried with them the knowledge that galactic civilization had just encountered its first existential challenge. On Earth, humans continued their daily routines, unaware that their mere existence had just changed the course of galactic history. In military academies around their planet, young officers studied historical battles. In research facilities, scientists developed new technologies with potential military applications. In government buildings, strategists planned for conflicts that existed only as possibilities. And in the void of space, alien civilizations began preparing for the arrival of humanity among the stars, knowing that nothing would ever be the same again. The age of galactic peace was ending. The age of human expansion was about to begin. And across 1,000 worlds, beings who had never known fear were learning what it meant to be afraid.